But I want to pivot a little bit to your personal success because we are in an industry that, let's face it, is really difficult. It is a tough business to be in, and success in business in general is really hard. I don't want to dance around that, right? Some people make it seem like it's easy. It's not. Most of the people I know who have succeeded in business, they have gone through some tough times, and they've probably failed
Yeah.
once or twice before they succeeded. So tell me a little bit about your success story, if you will, and what do you think were some of the reasons that you succeeded where 92% of people fail?
Is the 92% like a real stat, or is it just
Yes,
okay, that's crazy.
92% of life insurance agents fail within the
Wow.
first 3 years.
Yeah, so this is a
In
good
business in
question.
general, the number
Yeah.
is 80% in year one fail.
Yeah. It's pretty terrible. And that's something that I'm hoping we as industry leaders can help make that number.
I don't have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. I'm telling you, man. The reason why I ended up here has much more to do with, well, other things we don't need to get into, but I'm not an entrepreneur by choice nor
Yep.
by nature. I kind
Yep.
of ended up here, but
So here's what I'd say. Um when I was 20, 21 years old, thinking about going out, starting business, I had a lot of fear and I had a lot of like anxiety. And I watched a TED talk and it talked about regret and talked about like they studying people aging. And then when they got their 70s and 80s, the thing that they regret is not taking more risk. And I just kind of made a commitment to myself that it's like, I don't want to live with regret. I don't want to live with regret. And then a fan of Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's a great book. And in that book, he talks about your deep rooted fears and like going deeper, not just being like, hey, I'm afraid to speak in public. Well, it's why are you afraid to speak in public? You have a fear of you have a fear of what other people think of you. That's the fear. And I realized that, oh, I have a fear of what my family, my friends, people that I care about, people that I look up to, what they would think of me if I quote unquote failed. And so then I had to really think through it and say, like, Caleb, am I willing to go for it, not regret my life, but I need to be willing to look myself in the face or in the mirror and say, am I willing to risk my ego? And it's so funny for me to say it because who in the world, like I'm 20 years old, what possible thing do I have to lose? Which is always what we think when we look back. When I was in college, why was I stressed about taking a test? When I was in high school, why was I stressed? It's like it's all when you're in, it's always feels most stressed now, but when you zoom out and look back, you're like, what was I worried about?
Mhm,
And I was
mhm.
thinking like, okay, my 85-year-old self, if I looked back, what would be the things that I'd be really proud of myself? And what would be the things that I'd be disappointed? And I personally would be disappointed if I played small, if I didn't go for it. Okay, so that's step number one. That was like the mental framework of like, don't want to regret, but had to really be clear with my fears and face them and be like, I'm willing to fail. Like, I'm willing to fall on my face, fail, and I will survive. We live in America. They don't throw you in jail for failing business kind of deal. That's cool. Then the next step is okay, if I want a business, if my why is to help people see and reach their highest potential, if we want to do this for the right reasons, let's build a business, not a practice. And building a business, the thing that I did very early on was I was like, how do we get a team that can help leverage and elevate what we're doing? I believe every business needs to work off of this framework. Value. You need something valuable, either service or product that's valuable. And if you really want to be successful, you need to learn how to leverage that value. So how to maximize or amplify a service or a product. And so our business was a service-based business. We helped people with money. And on a micro level, it was great. But I was like, okay, what do we need to do to amplify this message and business to the next level? Well, we need to be able to get our message out, the book, the podcast, YouTube, speaking. We need to be able to build a team. So it's not just me, people, we take a team approach, start recruiting a team. And so from there, like that, the business was very much a stepping stone of like, how can we continue to be more valuable? I love learning. I love asking questions. I'm constantly learning. How do we continue to make more, have more value, which takes humility. But then I'm always thinking, okay, if we truly have gold in our hands, which I believe if people understood what we can do for them, there would be a line outside the door. So if we have that, how do we continue to amplify that and help more people and serve more people? Because one person can only serve so many people, but one person with leverage can serve more. It's where your outputs are greater than your input. And so last thing I'll say, and I know I'm talking a lot, is I make a lot less money than you might think. I made a commitment early on that we're going to invest back in our team and in the mission and the business. And people are always amazed what I spend and take home and what we keep in the business. And I believe it's selfish because I believe as the business continues to grow, it will all pay off in the end. But most people, when they're really trying to figure out what our secret is, it just comes down to, are you willing to invest 5-10 years into something and maybe take less and live on way less to invest in the future? And most people, the answer is no. It doesn't make them a bad person. It's just that's sometimes, it's like sometimes we want like the secret, and sometimes the secret is just like living on less and taking all the money that you could be living a more cushy life and investing that into people, assets, technology, value, and leverage that can help more people.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the things that's helped me a lot with that is selling whole life insurance. Because when I'm trying to encourage people to get into this business, and I always try to do something that, first of all, I had no mentor. I had to figure it all out on
Mm.
my own. Nothing. Nobody
Yeah.
ever helped me out. And I compare it to whole life insurance. I'm like, look, if you look at a whole life insurance policy over the first 2 years, it doesn't make any sense.
Good
It doesn't make
analogy.
any sense, right? So
Yeah.
if you want to get into this business, or really any business, but I think our business in particular, you need to have like at least a 5, ideally more like a 10-year time horizon, right?
Yep.
Because that's when you really start getting leverage. I know when a guy in the business, you probably know him too, for the first 3 years in the business, he made $30,000 total. First 3 years in the business.
Yeah. It's
The
tough.
only way he survived was he was living at home with his parents. That's the only way he survived, right? And now he's like one of the most successful guys out there, has a lot of agents working for him. For me, like most people, I didn't make much money in year one, right? I was living off of savings. I was a career changer. I worked in a very well-paying corporate, white-collar corporate job for a long time before I switched to this. And so I had savings that I was living off of. For me, it wasn't really until the end of year 2 that I started to get some traction. But I do believe, like in whole life insurance, there is that exponential curve, right?
Yeah.
But it's not going to be
I agree.
linear. You're not going to see it. And I think the hardest thing for someone like me is you can't control it, right? You
Yep.
can't, there's no formula to say, well, you put in these inputs and then you get this money coming out, right?
Yep.
It's like, well, you kind of just, it's ready, fire, aim, right?
Yep.
There's no formula. And you have to just keep trying things and see what works, right? Anyone
Yep.
who tells me that they go, oh, I had this amazing strategy, and I'm like, come on, no, you didn't, right? You may have had a strategy, but then what you did was you adjusted
Yep.
as you went forward with your product or your service or whatever, and you got feedback, you adjust over time,
Yep.
right? And so it's not so much that you had a great strategy, but that you were receptive, right? That you did it, right? That's the most important thing.
Yep.
Just get out there and start doing it,
I
and you'll
agree.
learn. You'll learn because the best information you're going to get is feedback from prospects and customers. That's the best information you're going to get. And you can't get that any other way than putting it in front of them,
I
right?
agree. I think that's well
Yeah.
said. It's well
So,
said.
and I say this like I'm some super successful entrepreneur guru. I'm not. But I've learned a few things. I've learned a few things. I think for me, it's just that I'm so much of a W-2 employee by mindset that the lessons for me stick more
Interesting.
because it's not my nature.
Hmm.
I think a lot of when you ask people what made you successful, oftentimes they don't really give you a good answer because the things that make them successful, the real skills that they
Yep.
have, the real gifts that they have are things they do so naturally they don't even think
Yep.
about. It just comes second nature to them.
Yeah.
Right. And so they'll
Yeah.
tell you about things that they struggled to learn, but those things may not have been
Yeah.
central to their success.
A good example of this is one of my favorite quotes is the solutions that you find to your weaknesses become your greatest strength. And so not a great reader, but what was I maybe better than average at? Talking. Why? Because I had to be a good talker if I was going to get through life. And so a lot of people are like, oh, you're a great, like a lot of doors have been open with my ability to speak. And again, it's like you're right. It's like, how did I learn that? Well, it helped the fact that I had to overcompensate talking as a kid because reading a book was not how I got information. And so it's just like so maybe some encouragement is if you're looking in your life, what are the solutions that you find to your weaknesses in life? And there might be something to go deeper in that, or that might be one of your unique abilities that you should um, lean into more because you might be taking it for granted, but you might have a skill set or an ability that not everyone has.
Yeah, I like to be a contrarian and say contrarian things. And so I've always found that I've been successful when I do kind of the opposite of what they tell you. So to speak, right? So one of the things they'll say is, oh, you got to get out of your comfort zone, right? If you want to succeed, you got to get out of your comfort zone. You know what my advice is? Find your comfort zone and stay in it. That's where you're going to be most successful because
Yeah.
you're going to find something that really fits you, that you're really good at, that you were made for, right? And it's going to feel natural,
Yeah.
right? Your best clients, your best businesses. There will be some uncomfortable parts to it. Don't get me wrong, right? Don't get me wrong. But ultimately, you're going to find, what you're really good at,
Yeah.
right? And it's going to feel very natural, right? So for me, going door to door, knocking on doors, talking to people, that's not really me. I'm, I don't know about you, but I am the most introverted person that I know.
Hmm.
Um, where I'm at my best is public speaking. That's where I'm
Cool.
at my best. I've never understood the fear of public speaking. It's not something I've ever had. I've always been really good at it. So, and that doesn't have to be in a room. I can reach a lot more people through the internet, right? And so
Yeah.
that's how I hope to build my business over the long run is just being the educator,
That's great.
right? In front of
Great.
an audience, right? I'm not the person who wants to sit down and have a cup of coffee and chat and get to know you like that. To quote a very successful realtor who is a client, she came up to me one day and she said, "I hate talking to people," and I was like, "Yes, we are on the same page."
That's funny.
But they'll tell you it's funny. I was at an awards ceremony, and I'm talking to this other life insurance agent, and he's prattling on, and we're both producing well because we're at a ceremony where you have to produce at a certain level to get there, right? And I was like, yeah, man, I hate talking to people. And he starts lecturing me. He's like, you're gonna have to get over that, right? And I'm kind of like, I'm here, aren't I? I just won like the new advisor of the year award. Did you see that? And like, so clearly, whatever I'm doing, it's working.
Yeah.
And I don't need to do it your way.
That's right. There's
Right?
a lot
I
of
don't
different
need to
ways.
follow this, all the advice made by extroverts for extroverts, right?
Yeah.
That's not, I don't need to do it
Funny.
that way, right? Sorry, that was soapbox moment,
No,
but
no, no. That's a good perspective. Good perspective.
because some people have told me that you are also very introverted. I don't know if this is true or not.
It's funny. I wonder who told you that. I am an extrovert, but
Okay.
the more I've grown and you travel and you speak, I become to appreciate more introverted things.
Hmm.
So I become way more introverted. I don't know if I don't think you change. I still get
No, no.
energy by
Yeah, yeah.
people, but I tend to get very drained by small talk and I try to avoid small talk at all cost. And
Yeah.
so I definitely have more introverted traits. And I think in the past I have told people like, yeah, I'm becoming more of an introvert. And so I can relate, I'm definitely not introverted. So that's where we can't relate, but I can relate to the idea of not like talking to, just doing small talk, but like I'm probably going to do something on our channel, a call in show where people call in and we
Hmm.
talk. And I'm smiling if you're listening to this, like just thinking about that. Cause I think that's going to be so much fun. Like talking to people and like, helping them wake up and all these things. That's going to be great. So, yeah, I'm maybe a contrarian when it comes to that.
Yeah, yeah. That's a whole nother topic of conversation. But